you are.
There it is.
Gotcha.
Better?
Yep. Can you see us?
Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. We've got you. We're going to record this as well. So I've got that recording just so you're aware.
Alrighty.
How you doing, man?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Good. I appreciate you having a little bit of flexibility for us on this one too. I know we bounced some schedules around, but we made it work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Congratulations too on them. You're kind of our first. I think he's our first winner of this, isn't he? Mm-hmm. You really are the first winner of it. It's something that we're doing new. I like it. I think it's kind of fun. We had a couple that we did Zoom consultation like this with from the UK, and the guy's birthday was his birthday, and his girlfriend set it up with us, and we surprised him for his birthday on it. So that was really our first one, but this is the first one that then after that, we're like, God, that was kind of fun. And it worked out pretty good. And I think it's something that people I think will benefit from, not just you. I hope you benefit from it, but then I think other people will benefit from watching it too. So I appreciate you supporting us that way by taking part in it.
Oh yeah, I'm stoked. I'm a pretty big fan of yours.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, man. I really do. So I'm gonna in like I said, so it's kind of new for us too. What I want to do is we can talk about anything you want dog wise, but I think I kind of want to have it be you kind of hand it over to you to steer as far as the direction goes. Probably helps me out to get a bit of a background on yourself and your dog, just to get a better feel for what you have. I stalked your Instagram a little bit, so I did see. Well, how old's your dog?
I've got he's going to be 5 in April, a black lab. He's a pointing lab actually. Okay. And then she's just turned she'll be a year and 2 years in September.
Okay. Is she chocolate?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I got a feel for that. I got a feel for what is hunting style for you. What are you? You're a waterfowler for sure, right? I saw quite a bit of that, but you upland too.
Yep, waterfowl and upland are the two main things. I'm actually going to start trying to shed hunt with the chocolate female because she's really loves bones.
Sure.
Really goes for bones. I was out in Beanfield shooting my bow this fall, and I mean I was just standing there shooting, and she'd run up to me. She had a pig bone from somewhere.
Okay.
Grabbed it and like, good job, and I threw it on the ground, said leave it, and I said go play. And I mean, she brought 4 of them, just going out and finding bones and bringing them back. So I'm assuming that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. A bone's a bone. I always tell people that, especially when you're shed hunting, when they're young, when they bring back a leg bone or something like that, I treat it like it's a 90-incher. I mean, I want them connecting the idea of this is the game. This is the thing that gets him excited about. So yeah. Where are you in Iowa?
Dubuque.
Okay. Yeah. So right on. Yeah. Beautiful over there. We used to do they used to have a big antler show down by like the casino by like the river there.
Yep.
They had a big antler. It was like it was primarily an antler show, antler auction. And we used to go there actually and have a booth and stuff. And we did some seminars there. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, it was really nice. They haven't done it for a few years, and it moved a little bit. I think it moved to Makokada for a little while, and but cool. So are you from there originally, or is that just where you live now?
I moved here like 2 years ago. I'm originally from Webster City, Iowa, kind of north central part of the state.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're doing concrete work there?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Working for Southside Concrete.
Okay. Is that commercial stuff, or what do you guys do concrete wise?
Yeah, commercial stuff. A lot of right now we've been working up in Fenimore, Wisconsin, doing an auditorium floor, finished floor. Mm-hmm.
Sure. So you're doing a lot of flat work, or do you guys do walls and everything?
Everything. Yep. The whole caboot.
Okay. What's your now you went to University of Iowa?
Yep.
And what was your major there?
Environmental science.
Okay. How the hell did you get into concrete?
I know a guy. I'm actually really good friends with family friends with the boss, and his 2 sons are foremen. So
sure.
They kind of roped me into it.
Okay. I used to work concrete. So I used to work for Myron Construction. I don't know if you know that name.
Something familiar.
big general contractor out of Wisconsin, but they've got offices in Iowa, and they're real big in the Midwest.
Mm.
But I poured a lot of concrete, man. Enough to have a couple of back surgeries already. So
Yeah.
well, cool. Well, I'm glad. Again, thanks for doing this. It's funny. We do workshops and stuff, and when people come to the workshops, one of the first things we do, we spend quite a bit of time on it. I want to hear people's stories. Like, I want to hear where they're from, why they're here, hear about their dog. And I always kind of joke about it, but I always say that's when the judging starts. Like, that's when I start judging people. And it's not judgmental, like good or bad. It's starting to get a feel for their situation. Cause I'm a believer in the dog is 50% of the equation. And I think the handler is the other part. And
Yeah.
I think they're both pretty equally important. So I like to get backgrounds on people. I like to get a little bit of an understanding, because I do think that impacts and affects some of our relationship stuff with the dog. So it's not just, and I'm curious. I always like hearing people's stories. I'm fascinated by how we get to where we get and why we get there. But so why don't you start out with, if you've got some stuff on your mind. One of the big differences is with you is, you knew you won, so you've had a little bit of time to probably think about it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you kind of point me in a direction that you want to go as far as what we're talking.
Yeah, I guess I've come up with a couple questions. There's a couple training questions, and just some philosophy stuff.
Sure.
I kind of just wanted to pick your brain on it.
Yep.
I guess the first training question would be, what would you do for like a dog who's really hard mouthed? Like, bringing back the dummy, you can kind of tell she's just kind of pulsing on it. She only does it like the first 2 or 3 times. I think it's just because she gets so amped up. She loves retrieving.
Sure.
But
which dog is it? Your younger one?
Yeah, the younger one.
Okay. How long has it been happening?
Couple months. Just since I took her a couple times this year hunting. And I don't know if it was the birds that kind of started it.
Yep.
Or what happened there, or if it was something that started when she was younger and now it's just kind of gotten worse and I haven't noticed it.
Yeah.
But wondering what your correction would be and how you would kind of correct a mouthy hard mouth dog.
Yeah, it's a good question. And a lot of times you're going to find that your question will be followed by a bunch of questions from me. That's why I wanted to know, like, when did it first start? Which dog is it? How old? Because I think, and this is something that I think can be applied towards just about everything we do training wise. I think it's one thing to assess the problem and recognize the problem. Like, we can see symptoms. I think a lot of times we try to correct symptoms. And I think a lot of times what we should be thinking about is, why, how come the symptom is there? So that's part of why I asked those questions. And, because the answer to that, hard mouth, I do think is a bit of a genetic trait. Now, there's a difference between hard mouth and chomping. So chomping can be habitual. I think it can be something that is created and formed as a habit. A hard mouth dog, I think, is a dog that's a cruncher. I mean, like a squisher. Like, it's from day one, it's biting down hard on everything. It's crushing everything. I think that can be genetic. I do think that that's a trait that can be thrown. I also think that it can be something that we can, if we recognize it right away, with most issues, even the genetic ones, I think what we can do is, can you put that on mute for me? What I think we can do is certain things that are inherent traits genetically programmed into them, I think we can start to try to, like, counter them, good or bad. So that I think that's the other thing I think of is, there's a lot of really good habits that our dogs have that are natural and inherent. And we can fuck that right up. I mean, we can make mistakes real easy by creating issues and not fixing issues as they come. So a dog that has this wanting to chomp, or if as soon as I do recognize that, I'm going to address it. And I think one of the things that, a real easy formal fix for it, have you done hold conditioning with the dog?
Sort of, yes. I went through, when she was younger, went through a couple weeks of it, stopped the retrieving like you had recommended.
Yep.
Did really well. I thought she had got it 100%.
Sure.
If I missed a step there, I watched the video.
Sure.
don't know if I missed a step there and I need to go back and redo that.
Well,
Or
maybe not. So hold conditioning can help, I think, with a dog that chomps. I think it also can create dogs to start chomping. Like I get a lot of messages from people, and if you look at some of our wooden dowels have a lot of teeth marks on them, and it's throughout the years I've used them a lot with a lot of different dogs. I've seen some people use them and they look like tooth. I mean, they're splintered. They're just, the dog has gotten nervous. The dog really pulses on it, chomps on it, and I think those are things that you got to correct that. Like you fix that. That's a great place to fix it because you're so isolated and dialed in on the situation and what you're really working on. So hold conditioning can help with that, but hold conditioning, I think one of the things with hold conditioning is I don't think it's you have this problem, it fixes this. It's not that simple, like black and white. It's hold conditioning is a process that helps us. It doesn't teach dogs to retrieve. I don't want people to think that you're training them to retrieve. That's why I hate the word trained retrieve, and I don't like the idea of force fetch. But they're the same thing, different words. But the idea of training a dog to retrieve is silly to me. Their last name is retriever. They shouldn't need to be trained. That's in them. What we need to do is bring it out and have them do it the way we want them to. We need to customize it and shape it and get it to fit exactly what we want. And that's, for me, deliver it, pick it up, don't screw around, bring it back, come to the front of me, hold on to it until I take it from you. When I say dead, you give it to me. Like that's perfect. That's the way I want it. Some people would prefer them to come to the left and come into heel. All these different reasons to make little bitty changes. Some people are happy if they get the dog within a couple steps. You know, bird gets in a couple steps, they'll reach out and pick it up off the ground if they want. I don't like that. Some people are satisfied with it. Some people think it's okay because it's close enough. I don't like it because if it's a cripple and it hits the ground and it runs off again, the chase is back on. So everyone's got their own thing. But hold conditioning is a process that can help me with a dog that blinks on something, runs out, decides not to pick it up, moves on. It can help me with a dog that picks it up and runs away with it. It can help a dog that runs past me. It can victory laps. All these things, it can help. It can also help with not chomping. Like that's because that's a part of the process. And that's one of the steps along the line from start to finish so you might have gone through hold conditioning and never even saw chomping. Like maybe that never happened. Maybe you used a wooden dowel. Maybe you didn't. People always think the wooden dowel is magic. It's not. It's just because I don't want the dog to dislike something like a dummy. I don't want them to dislike something like an antler. So when you start out with this process, some dogs don't like it. And some dogs, you really got to arm wrestle with them to even get it into their mouth. And so that negative potential situation, I don't want to associate it with something good. The idea of the wooden dowel is it's a rod for them to hold on to and get the understanding. But as soon as they're not fighting it anymore, the wooden dowel can go away. It's not like I have to have the wooden dowel for forever. But when you start putting in the wooden dowel and the dog does good, doesn't chomp on it, delivers it, walks back and forth on an elevator, goes to the ground, walks, delivers, does everything how you want him to do it. And then I go to the next thing and I maybe put in a fire hose dummy, or I put in some cold game, or I put in something. I make these progressional steps with the items. You may never see the chomping, but the other thing that I asked you about the timing with, when did it start happening? And you had mentioned, well, we did some bird hunting, and it kind of made it sound like maybe it was a little bit after that. I totally think it could be, because if the dog doesn't pick up warm game before hunting, which hunting is if that's the first chance for the dog to pick up feathers or game or warm game, those are three completely different things. Feathers in the mouth are different than cold game, frozen birds. Frozen birds are different than warm birds. They all have feathers, so I start out with wings, like backing this thing up, I'm putting wings on a dummy. Then cold game. The reason I use cold game is to not encourage chomping. It's firm. It's like putting something solid in there. It's not this squishiness. Like there's we did some stuff with Callie today where we shot some flyers over, and there's a difference between a cold game and a fresh killed bird. There's a difference between a fresh killed bird and a bird that's kind of still flapping a little bit. It's pretty dead, but it's flapping its wings a little bit. It's not fighting, but it's moving. And then there's a difference between a bird that's alive. She caught one today that I had put in and I dizzied it. And she caught it, picked it up, and its head's up, it's moving around. You can tell it's flexing, it's moving. It's probably trying to fight her a little bit at times. And that really made her hold it well, or else she's going to get wings in her face. But those, just picking up a live bird is different than a lukewarm bird. And that's a big step. And so when you start putting something in the dog's mouth, depending on their personality, some dogs will spit it out when they start feeling it move. Some dogs are a little timid of that. Some dogs are pretty bold and go, you're going to push on me, I'm pushing on you. And they combat it. They start to put pressure down. I think it's smart to not lose the bird. I think you got to put enough pressure, because I see some dogs that have such soft, sweet, wonderful mouths that it's literally like almost about to fall out because they're just so delicate. They're afraid to even ruffle a feather. That's a real nice, soft mouth. If it doesn't know how to put enough pressure on to keep that warm bird or that live bird from fluttering out of its mouth, you're going to lose birds. So it has to, and that's something that I don't know that I teach that. I think the dog figures that out. I encourage it. So if that dog all of a sudden picks up something that's mushy, like a warm bird, and it feels it move and it starts to really clamp onto it, to a degree, I'm okay with it to not lose the bird. But there's a fine line between what's too much and not enough. And so seeing that in the field, first off, I don't really want to see it in the field for the first time. So back that up, and how does it see it before it? Well, in some training sessions, I go from feathers to cold game to warm, fresh killed birds to maybe these borderline cripples to let them catch a live bird. So, and you can use different birds. Pigeons don't fight nearly like a pheasant. So you can use different levels of that to kind of get them there incrementally. But now you've got it. So it doesn't really matter. But I do think it's important to figure out, why do you have it? So if it is because of that bird, I go, okay, that's where it started. Never had the issue through hold conditioning. Never had the issue that I noticed it in retrieving with dummies. Another one that I think creates a lot of issues is rubber dummies. Those rubber, kind of hard. Avery makes one. Everybody makes one. There's a million of them out there. And they're like rubber. They're good for water. I don't mind them for water. I have a couple of them that I use in the water. But they're okay for that. I think they get slippery when they're wet, and I don't like that. And the other part that I don't like about them is they are squishy and they feel like a bird's body. And I see so many dogs, two bad habits that I see form: hanging out the mouth like a cigar and chomping. And I see them all the time with field trial guys. And I don't know that the field trial guys, I'm not knocking on field trial guys because I just don't do it. But I see them use them all the time. They're really inexpensive. $3 a piece. You can buy a pail of them for $15. So they're cheap. But I think that I see it all the time. I see these dogs chomping on them, or I see them slipping out of their mouths. So I get away from dummies like that. And I encourage and I correct every retrieve that isn't perfect. Every one of them. If it's out of the center of their mouth, I bring them back, I center it, and I tell them good. It's this consistency thing of every time you got to pick it up right. And so now if you've got a dog that's out there picking up a bird and chomping it on the way back, I'd put them up on a table. I'd go through hold just like you did before, but I'd use birds. And as soon as it starts to chomp, no, until the dog goes, ooh, I wasn't doing that right. And as soon as the dog starts to loosen up and not be chomping, like you're gonna have to firm up enough to the point where that dog stops the behavior. As soon as it stops the behavior, good. We gotta be as quick to correct. We gotta be quick to correct and sharp with our timing. We have to be just as quick with our praise and just as sharp with our praise. They have to understand what's wrong and they have to understand what's right with equal emphasis. So timing is so important. So I would put the dog back up and I'd go through and maybe don't start out with a bird, because I think that probably is part of the problem. Start out with canvas dummy. Start out with whatever else you're using. Get that really good. Don't see any issues with chomping. Then you move to cold game, and then move to warm game, and then move to take a live pigeon, a shackled pigeon. and get it to the point. If at any point throughout that progression, all of a sudden you start to see the chomping come back in, you go, there it is. That's the point that I need to start working on, and don't go past it until I fix it. And so if you can get them holding on because when it's right in front of you, you control the timing. When it's out there at 30 yards and they picked it up and they chomped it on all the way back to you, you can't correct them for chomping after they've run 30 yards chomping with it. And now you start saying no, and they go, no to what? Not to chomping. They're going to say no to coming back to you, because that's exactly what they did when you told them no. So I'd put them up on the table, I'd work them through it, and then find the point where it becomes an issue, firm up till you get change, and then get soft. And I do that with everything. Like, firm up to change behavior. Behavior changes, get softer, get softer, get softer. Behavior goes the wrong way, firm up, and then start to get softer. By the time you do this enough times, over and over and over and over and over, every retrieve is perfect. Like, I can't settle for dogs to bring stuff back and have it be a little bit sloppy. Because if I'm okay with it here, as soon as it gets a little more complicated, that little sloppiness makes a problem. And so if we correct it consistently, eventually it becomes the norm. And then I don't ever have to think about it when things get more distracting and more complicated. That's one thing I can check off the list, because I don't even have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Way longer answer than probably what you're looking for. But
no, that was good. That was good. I needed that.
Okay.
I guess another training question would be just on like a T drill, your overs, out in the field, or like even out just training in the field. As soon as you kind of get away from that fence or that barrier that they're running on, dogs start drifting towards you.
Okay.
How would you go about correcting that? Just repetition on the fence a little bit more on like
I think it's so what I would do is, if you're doing something with a real nice background, if it's a fence line, a tree line, a separation in grass, a driveway, I'm naming stuff that I use around my house. So you got a straight edge, and they're running real nice with straight edge. First off, I'd look at it and go, is that dummy real clear to them? Like, is it nice, short, no cover, like short grass? Is it the road? Is it real easy for them to see? Because if they're starting to fade to you, I go, how come? Are they fading to you because they can't see the dummy? Is it something that they're coming and all of a sudden they run it really nice when you got the fence, but where you got the fence, the dummies stick out like a sore thumb. So as soon as they turn, they see it, they go to it. You got to remember the purpose of the drill. The purpose of the drill is not to get them to run and hunt and find something. The idea is turn and run a straight line with a purpose in mind. Like, that's brainwashing them to say, get out or get on or whatever you say means turn and go, and just turn and go. That's in training to form that habit. Make it easy for them. Make the dummies stand out, so the second they turn, they go, that's right where I should go. If they can't see the dummy, they might be running and there might be it all depends on the situation, but maybe there's an environmental change that's drawing them to something. Maybe there's a slight ditch. Maybe there's a tree or something at a horizon that they see and they go, there's a target. I'm going to run to the target. Until you're in their eyes looking, you don't know why they're fading. They're fading to you maybe because they're just not that confident. Maybe they're going, I got to get a little bit closer to dad. But I think by giving them a clear dummy to stand the dummy up, I use a lot of times I'll use the ones that I'm going to shoot, a dummy launcher dummy, because it's got a flat square butt, and I'll stand it up. I know some people take white tape and they'll tape white tape on the end of it and stand it up. So make it so that in training, they have a target. So, but the other thing that I would do, so that's one thing to help. Then what I would do is, instead of going from that fence to an open field and replicating that drill where you want them to run a 90-degree right or a left, but it's a wide open field. There is no help. There's no cheating. I would go, instead of going from that fence line where, what do we do when we get them on a fence line? We back them up right to the fence line. We put the dummies out right off the fence line, and they do really well with it. It's because we put the training wheels on. We made it easy. You make the dummies easy to see. You make the setup really easy. They run it. Then we go to the field. There's no more fence. There's no more cheating. We back them up right to the fence line. We put the dummies out right off the fence line. And they do really well with it. It's because we put the training wheels on. We made it easy. You make the dummies easy to see. You make the setup really easy. They run it. Then we go to the field. There's no more fence. and maybe there's even cover, and now you can't, maybe you can or can't see the dummies. All depends on how you set it up. Any one of those things makes it more difficult. So instead of doing that, that's A to Z. You're going to get to Z. You want to get to Z, but instead of going A to Z, go A to B. So here's my fence line. Here's where I'm sending them from. Here's where we're putting a dummy. Here's where we're putting a dummy. Instead of going to the field and taking that away, leave the fence line there, and then just back up a little bit further and put the dog here, here, and here for your dummies. So you've added 25 yards from the fence. Maybe that's too much and the dog starts to fade. So back it up, do 10 yards. So instead of being right up along the fence, incrementally creep your way out, and then get to the point where you get far enough away from the fence that the fence really isn't helping steer the dog anymore. And ask yourself, is it getting better? Is the dog taking crisper 90s, or is it starting to fade? If it's starting to fade, figure out why. And then I'd go, it's a combination of one of those reasons and not enough repetition. Mm-hmm. So the other thing you could do without, so change it up, go out into an open field, no fence, but take the lawnmower and cut yourself a nice track. So now now you're giving them a different type of training wheel is all you're doing. But it's different. It's different than having that big backer board behind them, the fence or the trees or whatever it is. So just mix it up,
Yeah, definitely. I guess the next one is kind of more of a philosophy. Mayo is a pointing lab, and I just kind of want to know what your take was on pointing labs, and if you kind of believe in them, kind of don't. I've talked with some people, big retriever trial guys here in Dubuque, and they kind of scoffed at the idea of a pointing lab.
Sure.
They kind of said all labs hesitate when they find game. That's just the hesitation you're kind of seeing. There's not a true pointing lab. Sure. But I don't know if you've seen the videos or pictures of him. Like, he flocks on like a short hair.
Sure.
And I didn't know what kind of your take was, and if you would go about training that, especially, I know you're getting the setter.
Yep.
Kind of, because I watched Standing Stone too. Yeah. And with their training, they use a lot of collars. I was wondering kind of how you would train a pointer or a pointing lab to whoa without the e-collar.
Yeah. So
two-part question to that.
Yeah. So first question on the idea of, I think you said at one point, do you believe in the idea of a pointing lab? If the lab is pointing, I believe. Like, yeah, totally. Like, it's hard to argue with the idea of it. I've trained a dog named Cody. We have a series called Cody Go Back, and her owner owns Callie, is a dog we're training right now in a series. And he was here today. He brought more birds for me for training with Callie, and he hunts with Cody, and Cody points. I didn't train her to point. Cody points. Cody holds point. She's not steady and staunch like a pointer, but she definitely points. He loves it because he gives him time. He gets into position. He really likes the style of it. So do they point? For sure. Does all dogs? I listened to a podcast, Hunting Dog Confidential. Have you ever listened to that one? Pretty good. It's really good. It tells the origins and history of different breeds. It's put on by, I think it's called Northwoods Collective, and they have Project Upland. So it's same family of podcasts, and it's really good, and it's real entertaining, and it's it's a lot of history. I love history stuff. So it runs through the history of breeds, and now they're into another season, and they're talking about hunting styles and methods. But anyway, in that podcast, it's the first time I had ever heard this, and I thought makes perfect sense. What he said, I think the guy's name is Craig Koshik. He said, all dogs point to a degree, all dogs. And he said, in fact, all people will point to a degree. And he said, pointing case, a fly lands on the table and you're a hunter and you're hunting the fly you're going to kill the fly. So what do you do when the fly lands on the table? When the fly lands on the table, you move into a certain point before and then you stop, and then you try to swat at them. And I thought about it, and I thought, I've never seen anybody not do that. Like, that's what we do. When we see that game, we get as close as we think we can get to it without bumping it. And then we pause, collect our thoughts, work it out in our head, whatever we're going to do. And then we go. And that's humans pointing. It's natural, instinctive stuff. Dogs do it as well. And I look at, like, I call it style. I call it a dog's style. And I talk about the idea of reading your dog's body language all the time. And we all call it birdie. Everyone calls it dogs getting birdie. Well, in theory, if you watch that and you realize there is a moment, sometimes it's very brief. But I saw it today when Callie jumped one of those birds and it ran. It startled her almost to a point when, prior to it moving, even when she touched scent, she stopped, paused, and then worked towards it. But that split second pause was her point. She just didn't hold it. And so, do some dogs have a greater tendency to hold? For sure. No question about it. I mean, that in theory, that's how they developed pointing dogs over the years. Like, they took the dogs that had the tendencies to hold and be steady and point, and they bred them to the other dog that held, and with the idea and the goal of, we want to create a dog that holds and is steady to point. So that and with all, and then here's where Hunting Dog Confidential comes in really, really nicely, is there's all these crosses over the years, and there's all these, how we develop specific breeds. And we brought this breed and this breed that used to not even be breeds, but they were refined into some certain style or breed. And there's tons of different crosses in these dogs. And so does some of it trickle through to the retrievers? The retrievers are the retrievers, the pointers are the pointers, but is there overlap? No question, there is, for sure. So some of these dogs, I do think, and I think people have recognized and realized it, and I think people have said, this is really desirable to some people. And when you find something that's desirable and unique and somewhat niche, then all of a sudden it becomes an opportunity for business. And so I think there are kennels that specialize in pointing labs. So do they exist? For sure. Is it all natural? I think the great majority is. I think we can enhance it if we choose to. And so it kind of leads into your next question of, how would I go about it with the dog? So I don't plan on training. I am going to get a setter. I don't plan on training it to point. Like, I'm buying, like, what I think. I've researched this for a long time. I found the kennel that I want to get this dog from, Northwoods Bird Dogs. And in what I have found, for me personally, I think they're the right fit of dog. So I don't think, if I did my homework right, I shouldn't be training the dog to point. It's going to point. What will happen is how well will I set it up? How well will I give it opportunity? How well will I give it a chance to bring that to the surface? And then it's a question of, well, then how do I harness it? Because, so Tom's dog, Cody, will point and hold. And he said, she doesn't hold forever, but she'll hold for quite a while. And I said, if you wanted to, you could get her to hold longer, like, because she's naturally doing it. Now what I would do is, like, we did it today with Callie, because Callie we've got our own little struggles with her, with some of the stuff we want her to do. She does so many things very well. Steadiness for her is okay. And so we shot these birds. I encouraged her to get loose and get a little chase, get a little hunt, get a little flush. So I encouraged that for a while. But then I said, now I want to counter it before we're done with the session. And how I'm going to counter it is, I'm going to create and work on her steadiness. So I took these fresh killed birds that she had just retrieved and really liked, and I pitched them all around her, and she sat there and watched. And she wanted to creep a little bit. And then before Tom left, Tom had a tennis ball he had two of his other dogs with, and he threw the tennis ball, and she went to break on it. And I brought her back, and I said, go ahead and throw that tennis ball, but I'm not letting her break. And he even said, he's like, maybe I shouldn't have done that. I said, no, it's not that you shouldn't have done that. It's, I should have been ready. And we should have made sure that we're not going to allow it to turn into a free-for-all, go chase the tennis ball. So I don't want to sacrifice steadiness for a gun dog. And gun dog value. I don't want dogs breaking out of blinds. I don't want dogs breaking out of huts. I don't want dogs breaking, period, because for safety, but also because it's obnoxious to the other hunters. It's not cordial to other dogs. Like it can create issues with more birds that are coming. There's plenty of reasons to not have dogs break. And the one of the things that used to be a really big deal when I was getting into training a long time ago, and all my buddies and us, we all got our first dogs. Really, we were, you know, out of high school, and we were getting our first our dog type of thing. And it was like the biggest hurdle for us was to get dogs to be steady. And it's because none of us ever raised dogs to be steady. We raised them with the idea of we want them to hunt. So we were so excited about them hunting. We got so much value out of them hunting. We did not put anywhere near the focus on foundation that we needed to or should have. Steadying up a dog now to me is real easy. When I was a freshman in college, I thought if I could just get this dog to be steady, that would be like the biggest accomplishment, because I'd be the only one in our group that could do it. And it would make it a lot nicer to hunt with my dog. It's part of the reason why I wanted to do it. Is it's a circus when you you know, you're in a blind and you're working birds, and all of a sudden it's one thing to come up and start shooting and birds hit the ground and dogs go on their own. I hate that, but that's one thing. At least the dog didn't run when you're shooting. At least the dog didn't run. It was somewhat safe of a safe situation. But the problem with that is now you got 2 or 3 dogs that are doing that together. And then the next group of birds that comes in, you bring your guns up and you start shooting. And as you're shooting, the one dog goes because he goes, that one's going to go, so I'm going. And then the next time the birds come in, and as soon as you pop your blind up, the dogs go. And then the next time it's as soon as you click your safety off, the dog goes. And it before you know it, like you start blowing on your calls and the dogs are going to go, because all this stuff has led them up to the idea of, I got to be first. Where I prefer to have it, all the chaos be done, and then laugh about it, joke about it, pick on that guy for missing, and then say, who wants to go pick a bird? And then you go send. Okay, I'll send for that one. You send for this one. It's just more controlled. It's more enjoyable. Everybody has more fun with it. So the idea of steadiness is really similar to a dog holding on point. There's a lot of distraction and temptation going on right now. The difference with the pointing dog is, I think the rush for the pointing dog, now this isn't maybe not necessarily the point for the pointing lab, but the flushers, think about the pointing dogs, the setters and the pointers, and some of these dogs that's what they do, and they don't necessarily retrieve real strong naturally. Where's the rush for them? Like my retriever, the reward is the retrieve. Where's the rush for the pointing dog? And I really think that it's a lot like a beagle. I don't know many beagles that even care about the rabbit once it's killed. They want nothing more than to catch up to it when it's alive and running away from them. But as soon as it's dead, the fun is done. And I think about a pointing dog in a similar way of, to me, I think the rush is, and I got this from Jerry at Northwoods Bird Dogs, is we asked him that, and he said, I think the high for the dog is when they get that cone, that scent, they get close enough that they know they're not bumping, but they're so close they can feel the bird. As they inhale that scent, that's it for them. Like that is they've reached it. That's the climax for them, is the idea of sit there and inhale this intense cone of scent and know that bird is right there. Feel that bird, know that bird, and then let you come in and do your thing. And you know, some of them will retrieve, some of them won't. But so to me, that's the difference between the dog that's driven by retrieve and the dog that's driven by point. And the dog that's driven by the point, I don't know if they're in a rush to get that over with. Where if you got the retriever, I think the retriever is torn between the idea of this point is really good, but that's not as good as me picking it up and bringing it back to you. So you've got that maybe battle going on within them. Where you can get past it, I think, is the idea of control and steadiness, to the idea of you can use the word whoa. I don't care what you say. You can, you know, pick whatever you want. Whoa is what everybody says with pointing dogs, but easy. I use easy all the time with my dogs. Easy, easy. It's the same as whoa. I say it in a very similar tone. I'm usually soft with it, unless I have to. And it depends on their actions. If they start to go and that's usually enough to lock them up, and they'll freeze, and they'll look at me and they'll go, sorry. And easy. So as soon as I go hard, I just as quickly come back down soft. And so if I can teach a dog to be steady in a lot of distracting situations, like you want to, a good steady dog is a dog that you can have sitting there. Now, here's the difference between the pointing dogs and and we just did a podcast about this because the guy was asking about, should I teach my pointing dog to sit? And I said, I think you're absolutely crazy if you think that's going to take anything away from his hunting. I don't know that I don't know you implement it in the hunting situation, but to teach a dog to sit for obedience should not take away from a natural point. But, and I believe that. You're going to have a hard time convincing me otherwise. But I like my dog sitting. I think it's a nice control thing, and it's from a retriever standpoint. I also train them at a point to stop sitting when I stop. Like I tell them, don't sit down when we stop walking, because I want them to be ready in any direction. Or if I turn, I want their feet to be able to move without having to stand up and then move their feet. You've probably seen it in some of our heel work videos. I used to do it with Spry a lot, did it with Bella quite a bit, but it's getting that good footwork. So the idea of getting a dog to heel by my side, and when I stop, you stop. I don't necessarily have to have them sitting. I do in the early part, and then I don't later on. I untrain it, but I get them to just stand on all fours. A good steady dog is a dog that you can walk on heel. You could have a animal, a bird, a rabbit, or whatever in your hand. Dog's on heel. You stop, dog stops. I set the bird or whatever it is on the ground, and the bird runs away from them, and the dog stands and watches and waits for me to ask them what to do next. Should I go get it? Should I say no and walk away from it? What do you want me to do? That's just a lot of control. It's a lot of obedience. It's the idea of being steady and not being distracted by temptation, not letting the temptation be stronger than my foundation of obedience. So you should be able to put them on the ground and roll tennis balls around them. You should be able to put them on the ground and have live birds walking around him. I watched this guy in the UK. He has a lot of chickens. Well, I had chickens for a long time. I don't have them right now, but we're probably going to get some more. We desensitized our dogs to the idea of even wanting to chase birds because we had chickens around when they were real little, and they got used to them to the point where they're not going to go and terrorize them. Where if someone brings a neighbor for a workshop, someone comes to the with a strange dog, their dogs want to kill my chickens, and the chickens can sense it. The chickens know when it's my dogs, they don't even run. They know when it's someone else's dog because I think they sense it and feel it. And that dog has this built up anxiety in them, and it's overflowing. And those chickens are going, I'm getting the hell out of here because he's going to come. He's going to get me if he can. So I think it's this idea of create the foundation of steadiness to the point for the retriever, to the point where when the dog goes, we're able to stop them, create a habit with it. I like dogs to sit to the flush. I like dogs to flush and then sit down and wait for me to tell them what they should do. Because if it's a hen and I'm hunting in South Dakota, it's flying away and we're going to keep hunting. So I don't necessarily want them every flush chasing. I want to have that ability to have that control. It would be backing up and training and going pigeon on a string, pigeon on a cane pole in the cover. Dog comes up and I maybe even with the retriever, I might even stop them to sit to the whistle. And then I'd go over to them, pick them up. Easy. Bounce that little bird out of there and let them just steady up for it. And practice that until finally they start to go, there's a bird. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? And he's going to look to me for the next move. But if you've got it naturally, you're 50% there already. Now you just got to get the control part to settle in with the whoa or easy. I honestly I'm not going to use a collar on the setter. I've got plenty of people that can't wait for me to do it and are ready for me to fail. I love the challenge.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Thank you.
That help?
Yeah, greatly. Yeah, that's some good ideas. I guess kind of going off that, a while back on one of the podcasts, you said a 6-month-old pointer, you'd rather take that out into it. You think that'd be more field ready than a 6-month-old retriever.
Totally. 100%.
And I wondered if you could elaborate more on that and kind of, are you going to hunt your setter with your labs?
Yeah. So
woods or.
So I think the idea of, and I don't know that a 6-month-old's pointer is ready for the field or not. I think they can be. I don't think a 6-month-old retriever is ready for the field. They're not old enough to have seen enough. They're not old enough to have a foundation that's strong enough. There's going to be way too many potential distractions and things that come up that are out of my control that I just don't want to, it's not worth risking the opportunity for fail that could impact the next 10 to 15 years. Like it's a risk versus reward thing. I just don't see the reward outweighing the risk. So
Yep.
for me, I mean, that could be said. And I don't like age. I don't like gauging things on time or age. So that being said, that could be a year-old dog. It could be a year-and-a-half-old dog. It could be a 2-year-old dog that just isn't ready. If they don't have the stuff, I just don't think they're ready. And if they're not ready, it's not worth it. So the reason I think a pointing dog, and this is just from research that I've done now, kind of leading up to this setter, the reason I think you could get away with it is because I look at what we're actually doing. And when you're bringing that pointing dog out, I think one of the most important parts of developing and allowing the point to happen and come to the surface is opportunities and touches of birds. Mm-hmm. I really believe in the idea of wild birds. I think you can do certain things with pen birds. I think you can do certain things with pigeons. I really think wild birds are going to be really, really, really important for my dog's development. So giving them the opportunity, I look at it a lot. I do look at it similar to shed training. So if I take a dog shed train, if I'm training a dog to shed hunt, 6 months old, and it's a retriever, and I take it out in the field, I will caution you, be careful about how far you go, how long you go, the terrain you're in. Young dogs at 6 months probably aren't up to all the physical stuff that we want a hunting dog to be doing, just because they're just developing, and I don't want to put any extra stress on joints and things that don't need to it's not worth it. Again, risk versus reward. But I would say go ahead and take the dog. If you're going shed hunting, take them with. I don't think there's a real issue with the idea of you're screwing up the dog's training from a shed hunting perspective. I think the issue comes in is with those who have unrealistic expectations. I think if you take that dog, take them full knowing the chances of you having him perform like a shed dog are virtually non-existent. So don't be upset when you find the antlers and it doesn't do what you want it to do when it's a finished dog. There's where you can run into issues because you get upset, you get frustrated, you get down on the dog, you start getting negative about everything you're doing with the dog. God, I'm wasting my time. But if you realize you've got a second grader that you're asking to go play professional sports, like you've got a person that's at that, bitty basketball level, and you think they should be playing in the Final Four. It's not going to happen. That kid can't even start to think about the game of basketball, but you're asking it to play at a really high level. Now, if you go into I'm not saying don't wait to teach a kid to play basketball until they're 18. I'm saying teach a second grader like you should teach a second grader. Have it be fun. Take them to open gym, let them run around. And I don't care if they kick the balls. They're in the gym. They're in the right place. They're in the right environment. Get them in the environment to at least start to like the idea of this game. And don't get upset when it doesn't turn into the finished product. So I think you can get away with that with shed hunting. I think it's similar when it comes to a pointing dog. I don't know what you hurt by taking a pointing dog out into the woods and walking around where there's potentially birds. Are they going to bump birds? Yeah, probably. Mm-hmm. Is that good? Yeah, probably. Because how do you know how close you can get to it without getting close to it? Like, I just think the experience is valuable for that pointing dog. And I think at that age, again, you better go into it with now, if you go into it with a 6-month-old pup and it's bumping grouse, a real spooky bird, if it's bumping them because it's getting too close at 6 months old, and you start getting upset at it, and you start getting frustrated at it, you start hollering at it, you start, God forbid, you got a collar on it, you start using a collar to start correcting the dog. Whoa, wait a minute. That could get real bad, I think. But I think taking the dog for a walk in the woods is maybe some of the best things you can do. Now, I also think 6-month-old, I don't care what breed it is, pointer or retriever, physical development is physical development in a dog. And I think you got to be careful. You're not going to go for 2-hour walks with a 6-month-old dog and not be potentially setting yourself to have some problems there physically. Like, half hour, 45-minute walk on like I've got spots. I'm really hoping to get that pup this summer. I don't know if we're going to get it or not for sure, because there's only so many litters, and I'm not real high on the list. So I'm questioning whether I'm gonna get it. But if I were, my buddy is getting one out of a litter that's on the ground right now, out of the same kennel. But he's getting a male. So he is getting one in a couple of weeks, probably like 4 weeks, he's gonna have it. And I know already, like I'll go with him, but like he has some property up there. He's got a camp up there for grouse hunting, and he's got some well-groomed trails, and it's a great setup. It's gonna be a great place for us to train some dogs. When that little dog is 6 months old, we'll be walking that dog on those trails, because those trails are planted with clover. They're easy walking. There's birds that will feed onto them. I mean, it's perfect. So yeah, we're totally, and you can take like, you can leave his camp and go, you could walk 10 different routes that are 30 minutes or less and never walk the same trails. So it's like, yeah, I don't know why we would be, I don't know why I would have any hesitation to do that with a setter or a pointing dog. I just think it's a great opportunity to give it a little exercise and hopefully start to give the opportunity for some of that inherent stuff to come out. But the retriever, think about the duck hunts you go on, all the stuff that's going on. That's no place for, you don't go for a half-hour duck hunt.
Yeah.
You know, you don't go for a duck hunt that doesn't have big 12 gauges booming, you know, like there's just way too many things there that until they're ready. And I don't know that it's dictated by time. I think it's a combination of where they're at mentally, physically, and all of that is connected, I think, back to their age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So you were talking about the grouse woods. I've got a buddy who lives up in northern Wisconsin. I think this year we're gonna go up and grouse hunt.
Sure.
Do you think dogs who have been on pheasants and quails are going to be kind of a learning curve going into finding grouse and woodcock, or you think they'll pick it up pretty quick? That was just off top, just kind of came to me as you were talking there.
Yeah, I think there'll be a learning curve for sure. I think they'll pick it up for sure. You know, game bird's a game bird. I think have you grouse hunted before?
No, never. This will be the first time.
Oh man, you're gonna love it. So get ready, because where are you gonna go?
I don't know exactly. He lives in north central Wisconsin, but he's got a cabin. His dad actually guides bear hunts up way north Wisconsin.
Okay.
And they got a cabin up there, so I think that's where we're going.
Yeah, I'll have to follow up with you, find out where you're going. But because that's kind of where we are. But I would say so. Here's the big differences that I think will impact the dog. Hunting's hunting. I don't think it's going to be that. Range may be a little bit of a change. The cover is going to be so different. Like how do I explain? Good grouse cover is something that is like you can't see. You certainly can't, like, depending on the time of the year too, before the leaves come down, I don't know that you could see a bird if it flushed 10 yards or less from you. It's just so thick. You don't see them. You hear a lot of them. So I love dogs that work close for lots of different reasons. I like to watch the dogs work. That's one reason why I got this setter instead of a pointer. I was going to get a pointer before, but a pointer with the tendency, and that's not all of them, but with the tendency to have a little bit bigger range. Like my setter, I'm waiting for pointing dog guys to call my dog a bootlicker, because I hope he is. I hope she is, because where I hunt in the stuff I'm hunting, if she's not, I won't ever see her. And I'm not interested in watching. I'm not interested in going grouse hunting and watching a handheld. Like, to me, that's not what I'm there for. So I don't know that I'm still on the fence of whether or not I'm going to put GPS on the bell. Like a bell, yeah. Will I spend a lot more time looking for my dog? Probably. Will that take away from the number of birds I might shoot in a season? Probably. Do I care? Not at all. Like, if you're going up to grouse hunt with the idea of you want to feed your family, don't go grouse hunting. Like, they're really hard to hit. They're really hard to find. They're really hard to hit. They're really hard for a dog to work. They're the king for a reason. I can't tell you how strongly I feel about that. I love them. Woodcock are a lot of fun. that I would go in October if I were you, so that you have woodcock there, because that will help your dog. I think that'll help your dog greatly. They hold really nicely. They're going to be in very similar covers, but I think that the change will be not only for your dog working in really different types of cover and habitat, but also for you to hunt, to swing and shoot, to get your bearings, to keep standing up, like you're to not be bleeding, to have your eyes like where I don't wear them, and I don't think I can go another season without wearing safety glasses, because I literally am afraid I will probably have eye damage, because you get hit so often with sticks and twigs, and I don't wear them, and I hate glasses, and I don't know that I can do it another season without them. So I'm going to probably have to find some type of a pair of safety glasses that I can do it with. But and I don't wear them because I just feel kind of nerdy with them. I feel like you're that shooting guy, and I get why they do it, but I need to, because it's just really, really difficult conditions. But that being said, Ben and I hunted this year. We hunted a logging road. There was a clear cut that was cut that winter, so it's wide open. I mean, there was virtually no undergrowth at all. In 15, 20 years, it'll be really good. But it butted up against a really good cut. So we were walking it, and dogs got birdie and worked into the cut, like the clear cut. And I was like, I wasn't even getting ready, because it was the second or third week. Yeah. And so it was still pretty early in the season. I wasn't even getting ready. I knew they're birdie, but I figured there's a rabbit or something, because there's no way there's a grouse in there. And it was kind of towards the afternoon. It was 3:34 in the afternoon. And here a covey of grouse got up. It was it was a brood. It was a family of them. And 5 of them got up and flew across the logging trail into the timber. And it looked like a covey of quail. I've never seen anything like that before. I'd never seen a bird in cover like that before. It surprised me more than anything. We unloaded our gun. I shot twice. You shot 3 times. We knocked 1 bird down out of it. It was the easiest shots I've ever seen in my life. I mean, these were juvenile birds. I mean, you could have hit one with a 1 BB and they'd went down. We missed them all, but 1. Ben got 1. But it was not where they should have been, or not where I should have expected to see them. So you will get some opportunities that'll just surprise you. That's the other reason I love the bird is you think you know where they should be, and then there's none there, and then you're walking out frustrated with yourself, and all of a sudden one gets up where it totally shouldn't be, and you're not, it's just, they're awesome birds. But it'll be an adjustment for both you and the dog. Will they do it? For sure. And then I would say they'll get better, obviously, the more you do it, because I just think that evolution is in them to evolve and start to form around what you expose them to. Dogs are real forgiving. We can put them into such real strange positions and odd places and spots, and they just are kind of chameleons, and they just figure out ways to fit in. And when you go back to that core of hunt, game finding ability, noses, a desire to find the bird, and you have good foundation. So dog let's say you're on that logging road and your dog is used to work in really big CRP fields, and you don't mind them getting out 100, 150 yards because they're going to work back. If that dog's going to do that in that cover, you're not going to see them. So do you have the ability to stop them on the whistle? Do you have the ability to recall them? Are you consistent enough to do that first morning and not allow them to do it? You might correct them the first 2 times, and you go, oh, I did it again, let them go. Well, that third time that you stopped them just wiped out the first 2 times that you corrected them. So are you consistent enough to stop the dog every time it gets to 30 yards and get the dog to start checking back in? Because he probably knows he's got a range where he gets out and checks in, gets out and checks in. And now today, up here, that distance is just different. So it's it's work on your part. It'll be work on the dog's part. But then, like I said, all of a sudden that chameleon effect takes place, and they just start fitting into it.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
You gotta let me know when you're up there.
I think late October. guess that's kind of when my buddy said it's pretty good. So
Sure.
hopefully,
Yeah. Usually by us, we're kind of north central Wisconsin, and usually I know I've got buddies in the UP, and they start seeing woodcock a week or two before me always, and they always get me all worked up about it. And I got to get up there, and they're not there, and they're not there. I mean, there's a few local birds, but not nowhere near like the flight. And when the flights do come through, I'm always going to be up there like the around say like the within the first week of October and the 15th, somewhere in there, because you just know you're going to time it. You're going to get flights. But we had flights of birds as late as that was in November, I think. It was when we had that big snow. Yeah. So we had, I mean, there were some birds that were hanging out probably later than they probably even should have been. Weather obviously is going to dictate some of that stuff from a migration standpoint, but we'll have to stay connected on that. I'll be curious to see how that goes.
yeah, definitely. I guess I got a couple more questions here. I also, you said something about field trials. You don't really field trial. I was kind of wondering why, kind of what your beliefs were on not field trialing compared to guys who are all big about field trials and how many titles a dog can get.
Yeah, well, I think it's a game. I think it's a game that you're either interested in the game or you're not. I'm not interested in that game. I don't have anything against them. I think I heard this again, and I think it's a really good. I think it's accurate. This guy, and I heard it from a guy that did a lot of field trialing in his past. He doesn't do it anymore. He did it when he was younger. He traveled and did it. He built a line of dogs off of it. But he said, field trials are like slot machines. You win just enough to come back. And I don't know that that's so far off, because I feel like there's not very often, and I'm careful to talk about it because I don't go to them and I don't see them. I've talked to enough people that do. I've seen enough about them. I probably am interested in going. I got a buddy that does it that I might spend some time with, just because I kind of want to understand it a little bit more. And I know there's different types of them, and so I'm careful to talk too much about them specifically, because I don't know that. I don't know nearly enough about them to talk a lot about them. But what I have seen is I'm a big I'm into hunting. I like hunting dogs. I like family dogs. I like dogs that are a real part of our core family 365 days a year. And so I have seen far too many of them that are built. Now I do know a little bit about the impacts they have on genetics. Like they have a lot, just like British field trials have a big influence on genetics. That's to me very desirable. Like I look for that. I use that as a measurement. I gauge. It's a barometer for the way the dogs perform. But the difference is with them, they're hunting. Like they're doing they're live birds. They're very applicable to a hunting situation. Their hunts are different than ours, no question about it. Their shoots are a lot different than what I consider our hunts, but they are a lot closer in the idea of where I see the skills transfer to being applicable for me. Now, American field trials, American hunt test stuff, I've talked to lots of people across the country doing shows, doing stuff where literally they've got a huge resume for the dog with lots of ribbons and lots of titles and lots of this and lots of that. And when I ask them about hunting, they look at me like I'm nuts. What do you mean hunting? I said, well, did you have a good duck season last year? How many birds did you guys pick up? I don't hunt with this dog. What do you mean you don't hunt with this dog? No, this is a trial dog. We compete with this dog. We do field trials with this dog. We run it in all this, and this. And I went, to me, the problem with that is, if I'm looking to buy a dog, for me, I want a dog that's going to hunt. So if the genetic pool is being based on this measuring stick of field trials and hunt tests, and those dogs aren't hunting, I'm looking at it and going, it works perfectly if I'm into field trials. It doesn't necessarily work for what I'm doing hunting, and it doesn't necessarily work for what I'm doing with my family. And so and I'm not saying they're all doing that, but if you look at, I'd be curious, I guess, to look at all the dogs that make Master Hunter, all the dogs that make whatever the pinnacle is. There's that, they've got the Super Retriever series or something, and so which is a kind of a hybrid of all this stuff. If you look at all the dogs that are like the top percentages of them, if you look at pedigrees, they have a big influence on pedigrees. And so if you look at that over the last 15 to 20 years, the dogs that, and I do think it can go back that far, because I think even today with AI and all that stuff, there are dogs that are no longer here that are very influential in breeding pools. Mm-hmm. So if you start looking at some of those dogs' names and you look at what those dogs did, not just in field trialing, but were they family dogs? Did they go hunting? What was the stuff they did when they weren't trialing? Mm-hmm. And then the percentage of puppies that they've thrown and where those puppies go. Are all those puppies going back into field trial systems, or are those puppies going into Tom's house down the road or Sarah across the street? Because they got a lab and they hunt 3 weekends out of the year, but they go camping and they got a cabin that they like to go and swim at, and they do all this stuff, and they want that black lab for it, or they want that yellow lab for it, whatever. They want that lab puppy. I think that's where the issues can come up, because sometimes that doesn't fit. So I always look at it and I go, the best dog, and people ask me all the time, where do you get the best dog? Well, that's a question of what's the best dog for you? Because what's the best dog for that guy is not the best dog for me. What the best dog for me is not the best dog for that guy, more than likely. And it's not to say that you can't do it all and you can't do a little bit of it all. But I think when you start talking about like field trials in general, so that's the impacts from the pool, the genetic standpoint of it. The other thing is, I just think cultural expectations with it, to me, are a little disappointing. I don't like whiny dogs. I don't like dogs that bark. I don't like dogs that are hard to walk in good control. And I think that I'm not saying all of them, but I think there's so many involved with that world that's accepted and okay, allowed, I should say, that creates a conception, this misconception that, well, that's okay for dogs to behave that way. Look at these. I mean, these guys are trainers that do this on the weekend and go to these. They look at all the ribbons they want. I mean, we're a ribbon society, man. We're a medal. I hate that. I don't think you should get participation medals. It's just my personal feeling. I don't debate a lot of stuff. I'm not interested in debating a lot of stuff. But I'll tell you what I think and why. And I'm not big on everyone getting a ribbon, and I'm not big on the idea of. But I think if you're going to run a circuit that you need people to come and pay entry fees, it's that slot machine mentality. Yeah, you come back, you win 3 more of those, and you'll be able to go to the next level, and then you can win 3 more. By the way, you got to come every weekend for this, like it becomes a very counterculture type thing, and that's okay. It's a cult, but I'm a part of cults too, man. I like guys that are into old shotguns. So we're kind of a weird group too. I like taking sauna. We're a weird group too. So it's just, what weird group do you want to be a part of? To me, that's some of it with them. I'm a little concerned sometimes with the age part of it. I think that we push dogs too fast, too hard, too early. And I think that a lot of those trial type setups encourage it. I mean, really young dogs doing stuff that I just look at it and I go, I don't know that we should be giving ribbons for dogs that can do that. But it's that way to get them into it. It's that get them in the pipeline, I think, real early. And you've heard me enough to say how I just don't like to rush stuff. And I think if it takes us a few years to get there, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I like to enjoy the few years before we get there as much as getting there. And so I think when we put pressure on ourselves to be doing certain things by certain ages, I think it becomes nowhere near as fun for me. And I don't think it's as fun for the dog. I think there's something about trying to force stuff, both literally and figuratively. And I look at life that way a lot more now than I used to. I look at dogs that way a lot more now than I used to. And I just think that they can be a parallel to a lot of things that we're doing outside of the dogs. Like I think about it. Think about some of the, like you played football. You played football at Iowa. So I saw that. So if all you, I can't, maybe I'm totally wrong with this, but to me, that's quite an accomplishment. I mean, there's a very small percentage of athletes that get to that level. And when you look back on it, if you're an athlete in your position, if you look back on that and go, the only part of that was really like achievement was those, how many years you played at 4 years?
Yeah, 4.5. Yep, I redshirted.
So 4.5 years. If all the good memories are during those 4.5 years, I'd be surprised. I would imagine that when you look back on it career-wise, from a football standpoint, I bet you got some pretty good memories in high school. I bet you got some pretty good memories. It would be junior high or 6th, 7th, 8th grade type stuff. I bet you got some pretty good memories of flag football stuff or Pop Warner type stuff that happened before any of the TV stuff, before any of the recruiting, look at the recruiting process. The recruiting process was before. I bet you the recruiting process was really nice. I wouldn't mind having Big Ten teams calling me.
No.
So if you looked at that part of your life and you said, those 4 years at Iowa, those were the good times. I think it'd be real sad, and I think it'd be a little bit, you wouldn't have as much, you wouldn't take away as much from it. But I bet you'll tell stories to family members. You don't have any kids, do you? You're not married, are you?
No, engaged.
So someday you might have some kids. I bet you'll tell stories about those times as well, with just as strong of feelings as you did the Iowa stuff. And I think I look at that and I go, man, you got 20 years of enjoyment there to get to that point. And so I look at this the dog thing, and I go, Taylor's 7, Ellie's 5, Spry is 3. And I look at those 3 dogs right now and I go, I'm not going to just start enjoying, like Taylor's real good. I didn't just start liking and enjoying it when she became real good. Like I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it for 7 years. Every phase of it, and it's all been a little bit different. So instead of focusing on that end goal and just realizing or recognizing the good stuff that comes when you're there, I'm big on the idea of celebrate lots of little wins along the way. And trip and stumble along the way a lot too, and not necessarily look at that as negative. Instead, look at it as, well, I learned something from that. I mean, half the shit I've done that's turned out good is because I screwed it up so bad to begin with. If I got pissed off every time I made a mistake, I'd never be happy. But I look at the mistakes I make, and I actually look at them and go, I think I'm going to be better because I did that, because I won't do that again, or I'll do this a little bit differently because I did it that way and it worked out in that, that it happened because I did this, change it. And all of a sudden we had a Christmas party here for our guys, and we went through my business partner, he's Des Moines, or he's down in Des Moines. My partner lives down there, my business partner, and he's got this thing, he talks about high-low. He wants to talk. We had a retreat thing where we went up and we fished at our cabin, all the guys from work. And at the end of the night, we had to sit around a campfire and go high low. And I had never heard of it. He said, I want to know what your high of the day was. I want to know what your low of the day was. And we went through that every night. Well, we did high low here at our Christmas party. And for the year, I said, let's do high low. Let's look at what. So we're sitting around and having a few drinks and talking, and different guys have different stories. Football season got canceled for one of our guys. He's a senior, canceled his football season. That was his low. Well, what's your high? His high was he signed a letter of intent. He's going to go play baseball next year for a college in Minnesota. So I said, it's awesome. It's a great high. It's an accomplishment. But I said, but you're low, yeah, sucks that you didn't get to play football. I mean, I felt for him, and I know he loved the game and all that. I said, but I look at it this way. Your senior year of football, you might have tore your knee up. Now you can't play baseball. You don't know. Like, things happen for a reason. We don't know why all the time, but your low could be your high. And it's all depends on how you look at it. Ben's car got stolen. That was his low. Ben's car got stolen right before Christmas. Lost his shotgun, lost all of his stuff. And so that was your low, right? And your high was shooting that big buck with your deer camp. He shot the biggest buck in 25 years up in this place or something pretty close to that. So he's got a real nice high. He had a pretty low, lost his car. But I said, but you got everything back and you got insurance money. Now you're going to get new shit. So like your low, if you look at your low really deeper, it might be not, that could be somebody's high. So it's about your perception. How do you look at it? And I wasn't always like that. And I've become more like that. And it makes things a lot more fun. It makes life a lot more fun. And we're not here that long. We're only here for a while. So I think we should enjoy it. I think we should enjoy training the dogs as much as we do hunting them. I think we should enjoy them more. And that's one way to do it.
I agree.
So
yeah. I guess one more question here, I was just what your take was on feeding your dogs. Like, what do you look for in food? And also when you feed, because being with the football background, me and my buddies, they all have hunting dogs. So before, we were always taught as like a person, before a competition, before you're going to work out, get a little something in your system. Get, don't eat a 4-course meal, obviously, but get, a banana, some oatmeal, protein shake or whatever. So we would always feed our dogs a little bit of food before we'd go out hunting.
Sure.
Now I've listened to like a lot of different podcast guys don't feed their dogs in the mornings. A couple guys I've hunted with, say don't feed your dogs in the morning. I was when do you feed and what do you feed? What do you look for in a food for your dogs?
Yeah. So we feed a food right now. It's called American Natural Premium. We feed the original blend. It's a company and I've fed, and I don't know that they have the best food. I've fed a variety of foods over the years. This company they make it here in Wisconsin. It's made in the same facility that makes Fromm, which is down near Germantown, somewhere down there, down by Milwaukee. It's really well known. The facility is really well known for cleanliness, and it's got really good standards as far as production goes. Fromm is a real high-end food. They make this with the exact same system, like it's the same facility. So that was part of it. It also came from a recommendation of a friend. I tried it. I put my dogs on it. I gauge a lot of success with food based on how the dogs look and how the dogs act. I think that's the best way to indicate it. The visual is easy to see. Coats, skin, and hair, like skin and fur. Like if you see good coats, good sleek coats, they're getting something right, And so I'm not a vet, and I don't pretend to be a vet, and I get very careful on talking the science of the food, but I can gauge whether it works well. I've had food in the past where we've switched away from a food that was actually, at one time way back when, we had a sponsor for a food that I fed and did real well with, and then all of a sudden the food wasn't. I fed and I noticed something with my dogs. It wasn't good. They seemed a bit sluggish. The coats didn't look as nice. I thought, well, it's got to be a coincidence. Well, it was right when we started feeding a new shipment of food, and I thought, well, I maybe got a bad bag. So I switched. Same thing, didn't go away. And so I contacted the rep that I worked with, and I said, something's going on here. And he said, hemmed and hawed. And he said, yeah, we were bought by another company, and we made some adjustments to our mix, to our feed. And I said, well, change it back, because I can notice it.
Yeah.
Dogs aren't doing as well. He said, no, it's not something that we can control. It was a more cost effective way of doing it. Blah, blah, blah. I switched foods, and I went from a person that was paying us and giving us food at that time. I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't care what it doesn't matter what you give me. I'm not feeding my dog something that's not going to work real well. So I've not taken any sponsored type stuff with that since. I just decided it's easier for me to just go buy the food that works well for me. So this is what we've been feeding. I don't know if it's the best food out there. It works really well with our dogs. As far as feeding them prior to the hunt, I don't think you should feed them prior to the hunt. There's an old saying, hungry dog hunts best. And I don't know I think that can be used as a metaphor. It actually came from a football coach, buddy of mine that's a football coach. And that's what he told me was hungry dogs hunt best. So he wants, and he was talking about his football players, but I look at the dog and I go, I'm not going to feed them prior to. Now, if I'm going to hunt them, now it depends on what we're hunting too. So if we're going duck hunting, I will feed my dogs in the morning, because I think those calories are important for them to help stay warm. If it's cold out, they could use it. They're not real active duck hunting. Like, they're sitting in quiet, they're making retrieves. So I will feed, if we're going duck hunting in cold conditions, I will feed the dog in the morning. But I'm not, if we're going pheasant hunting, I'm not going to feed the dog and then go hunt it right away. I don't mind the idea of feeding the dog in the morning and hunting them mid-morning. Like, I think getting that food into their system and processing is fine. Gives them that food, and that I think they need energy. I started doing this in the last few years. There's a company, it's called E3. They're a cattle ranch out of Kansas, Southeast Kansas. And it's E3 canine. They use byproducts of their cattle ranch. And there's one that's called protein poppers. There's one that's called trail mix. And there's one that was called, the third one that I liked. They come in a bag. They're like a treat, basically. I'm not a treat trainer, so I don't use them as treats. But I always had that with me in my pouch or in my truck as we bird hunt in the fall. And so what I'll do is, we don't get up that's another beautiful part about grouse hunting that you'll find out. You don't have to get up really early. Birds are on the roost. You let them get down, they don't get off the roost. So we're not hunting. I like to get up, have coffee, maybe a little breakfast. You kind of take your time and get going in the morning. So I don't mind feeding them right when I get up. Maybe not going to feed them a full bowl, but I'll feed them some. Then we'll hunt them in the morning. By mid-morning, we're hunting. And I would see, especially in warmer conditions, when these dogs are getting warmed down a little bit, at every couple of hours, we're back to the truck, and I'd give them some of this real high protein snack. And I felt like that gave them another energy boost. I felt like it was that power bar type thing midday. And then I would feed them heavier in the evening. I feed the same amount during the day. I'm about 3 cups with my dogs, and I'm usually about 1.5 cups to 1.75 cups evening and morning. And I'll change that a little bit. In the fall, I feed them a little bit more. They're over 4 cups in the fall, but they need that. They're burning a lot more energy. We're not burning nearly the energy right now. So, but I would split it up. And so in the morning, I would feed them maybe 25% of the total amount of food that I'm feeding in the day. And in the evening, I feed 75%. I like to water my food. I like to float it. I don't do it all the time. I used to do it all the time, but I saw too much tartar buildup on their food, on their teeth. So we will go wet probably 75% of the time. I'll float the food. I feel like it keeps them hydrated. My dogs don't wander the house. They don't have free reign of the house. They're on their place. They're in their kennel, or they're with me 99% of the time. So to have a bowl of water out for them, they're not always getting access to that water. So I like to give them an extra drink when they're getting their food. But I do think switching back to dry kibble every third or fourth day helps keeping the teeth clean.
Hmm.
So, and I don't do we don't do chews, we don't do toys, but E3 also has some of these bones. They're like a flavored bone, I guess. And my wife will give them to our dogs about once a month, maybe, one at a time, and she'll let them have it on their bed, and they can have it for about an hour. And some of them don't even chew on it because they're not chewers. They don't know what the hell to do with it. Some of them will, but we let them chew on it, and that helps with the tartar too. And then, but I don't give it to them all the time. I don't give it to them to have at their, at their leisure. We give it to them, we take it away.
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, that's about all the questions I have previously written down. I mean, I've got obviously sit and talk hunting and dogs all night, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. If you want to keep going, we can.
Well, I got my wife is coming home here with the kids, so we might I do it, and Ben's getting a little nervous here too. So I think we do got to kind of wrap this one up, but I appreciate you doing this. I enjoyed it. I thank you for your support, man. I know there's a million different things out there right now from content perspective, and I really appreciate you and anyone else that puts the time into watching. I know we are doing our best to try to share as much as we can. I certainly don't pretend to have all the answers, and I won't ever. I just, as soon as you think you do, you're in trouble. So one of our goals and one of our objectives from the start has been, if we can help, we're gonna. And so, don't ever hesitate to reach out. You keep me posted on how things are going. And like I said, if we can help out with anything, just let us know.
Yeah, definitely. Are you going to do this in like a one-on-one eventually, like an actual training? Like if I were to come up and train, or would you do something like that? Or
it's tough. Workshops are the best way for us to do it. Workshops are small groups, 15 people or less. Typically they get filled up at 15. We split into 4 groups at our workshops. So by having 3 or 4 people in a group is really nice to one handler, like to one trainer or leader. So we try to keep those workshops that size. Those are really the best way we can do stuff like that. One-on-one is just really hard to do from a scheduling standpoint. Zoom type stuff, having 1 million people in the last year ask, can we do this? And it's just really hard because it takes time. It's a challenge for us because we're doing so many other things. We've got other brands and we've got other stuff going on business wise. So it's tough, but because so many people have asked for it, and I've enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it when we did Matt. We're going to do it. I think we're going to do it as giveaways. I don't want to charge people for it. I'd rather help someone and feel like we're helping other people as one way of thinking and giving back to those who are helping us. And it was a movement that Lacrosse Boots has inspired me to do. Like we're not sponsored by them or anything, but they're friends of ours and we've done some stuff with them in the past business wise. And they sent this stuff out and they had a really good message, and it was about moving forward. It was forward moving in 2021 and all the stuff that's happened in 2020. And just, there's plenty of negative stuff that I look at and I go, we can hang up on that. We can get down about that, or we can be positive about stuff. And I really think the best way to change stuff is to change the people around you. So like I look at it and I go, the people that are around me, how can it positively impact them? Well, this is something that a lot of people ask for. How can we do it? How can we help others? That's why we're recording it. That's why we're going to share it, because this hopefully helps you some, but it hopefully helps the next guy that has the same questions and the next gal that has the exact same questions. So we go, let's share that. And so that's why the podcast, one of the main reasons we're doing the podcast, is because it's so driven by people that we think we can help more than just one. We'll help one, and one's enough. Like if I can help one person, that's enough, because helping one person hopefully inspires them to help someone else. And so the idea with this forward moving, this giving back idea is, can we help? Can we give back by doing this? which I hope it inspires you to whatever it is. There's going to be something that's going to come up and you're going to go, someone's going to ask, or you're going to look at and see an opportunity to go, I can give that person a hand. You know, he took an hour and a half out and did it for me. Why can't I do it for this person? And so I just think that the only way we get better is by making an effort. And so I go, we got to do it. So this is something that I think you're going to see us doing a little bit more this year.
Awesome.
So, all right.
Yeah.
My wife and kids were coming in. They were sneaking in on the back. I don't know if you saw that. They went around to the front door. They're coming in. So thanks, man.
Yep. Thank you. I was super stoked. This was awesome.
All right, buddy. I appreciate it. Take care.
Yep. You too.
We'll see you.
Yeah.